think one of the things that I see people really struggle with is just letting their ego go. Because I have shipped so much stuff that nobody wants, and I've loved it. It looked beautiful. I was so excited, but no one actually wanted it.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Slow Smoke Business Podcast. I'm Jarrod Morgan, and today I'm joined by product design extraordinaire and expert, Mr. Michael Sacca.
Great to meet you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I warned him before he got here that in this goofy Southern country show that we have talking about business, we actually grill out while we're going. So each time I try to pick something a little different. So this week we're going to have Conecuh sausage. And if you're from the South, everybody knows what Conecuh is. You might not know if you've not been down here, but I've been all over the world. I've had German sausage, I've had Wisconsin brats, I've had Cajun, I've had them all. This to me is my favorite one. It's the right kind of peppery and spicy, just some great stuff. So we're going to throw that on the grill. Michael, do you ever grill out up there? You're in Vancouver,
I used
right?
to have a grill, and we just moved like 2 months ago, and I haven't picked a new one up, but it's on my to-do list.
Okay, well, yeah. Maybe you'll get inspired here when you're
this.
So this is one of those pellet grills. You're up in Vancouver, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So a pellet grill. Do you guys have those up there?
Maybe.
So a pellet grill is almost like an oven, and so the barbecue purists are screaming at me right now for even trying to say it. So, but it's a grill that uses an auger, and it takes little compressed pellets of wood. And burns them slowly, and you get smoke, but it's a very controlled. You control the temperature. You can control almost like an oven, and you still get the fun there. So for those that are watching on YouTube, I hit this with some avocado spray because I'm going to go a little extra Jarrod style here and actually hit it with a little seasoning on the outside just to give it a little bit more sweetness there. So that'll be good. Okay, let's let those bad boys go. I'm going to crank it up to 350. And let's start talking product with our friend Michael.
All right.
So, going back through your background, you have had quite a career, but there's the common thread of great product design. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started?
Sure. Yeah. No. Thank you. I appreciate it. I got started a long time ago. 15 years or more. But I was living in LA, and I was working at a restaurant, and I graduated college. I'd moved out there to work in the music industry because I had a music business degree. And what I quickly found out was that no one cares if you have a music business degree in the music industry because it doesn't actually exist. So I ended up working at restaurants, and through that, I met a roommate on Craigslist, and it was actually myself, my friend Ethan, and Guy Branum, if you know him, a famous comedian. We all lived in this house together. It was when Guy was on G4. Yeah. And so Ethan, he was a self-taught engineer, probably been coding for a couple of years, but he worked at this credit repair company at the time. And he wrote some software that they basically couldn't fire him because he was the only person who knew how it worked in the whole company. And so he'd go into work around 12, he'd leave around 4. And here I was like slaving away at restaurants all day. So I decided to start teaching myself how to code. And I started on the front end so that I could help him because he was basically a back end developer. And so through that, I learned how to code, and I eventually quit the restaurants and started freelancing, kind of right into the fire there. And eventually built an agency. And within 3 or 4 years, we were taking on projects from Scholastic, Nike, Kobe Bryant. And that was kind of the very beginning
you
of my
casually
career.
You just casually throw that in the conversation. Like, oh, maybe you've heard of Nike. How do they pronounce that? Nike? Oh, yeah. So you jumped right to it. I was going to ask you those questions. Like, you're very humble, by the way, because you just sort of glossed over. I was waiting tables, working at a restaurant. Next thing I know, I'm with Nike. I mean, that's probably quite a story to get to that place. But that's incredible. So how on earth do you, first of all, how do you get in touch with a Nike or Scholastic, or you also worked with like Kobe Bryant and Siemens
Sure.
and all these? How do you even get in touch with people like that before you can even pitch them on a job?
It's a good question. And a lot of it's kind of luck. So like you get one and it starts to roll into the other. So we started working with a local Mac. My wife worked at Mac Cosmetics. They had a problem locally where they had to like check in and do like some timekeeping for employees. And so one of the managers was really frustrated. He loved technology. And so he had us build a prototype of like a calendar app for them. It didn't go anywhere. We didn't actually get hired by Mac proper. But we put it on our portfolio as something that we had built. Right, and had the Mac logo. And then a couple months later, a guy reached out who was running an agency who worked for Kobe Bryant, and he needed some help with the WordPress. He saw this Mac app. He was kind of impressed, and he needed similar functionality for this WordPress site that he's working on for Kobe.
Wow.
And so we kind of got lucky, right? Like Kobe didn't find us, but an agency who had hired an agency hired us to do some work. But then we could add that to our portfolio. It's kind of one more feather,
counts.
right? Yep.
Yeah.
So, we pushed to the site, it counted. And then, we slowly started to leverage that. We found our niche in mobile web. So this was like a long time ago, but mobile web was kind of upcoming and really a bit experimental for companies. So we were building it was called Sacca at the time, but it allowed you to deploy to iPhone and Android devices and then build like a mobile web site. So that's where we really specialized. And because of that, there was only a handful of people doing this type of work because we really were on the cutting edge. And so when Scholastic said, hey, we need a mobile app, we want it cheap because we don't want to pay for two apps.
Right.
Here's this thing. And there's like, 20 developers doing it. They reached out to us and we were able to beat everyone's price. And that's how we won that. So like these weren't heroic builds or even big clients sometimes, but it was great resume pieces to then build, and through that we started working with startups. We had other clients, but those big names really helped win those deals when we were up against other agencies. So even the Scholastic probably wasn't our biggest project by any means, but it was a great brand name that built trust with clients. We were able to build on top of that. And it really was because we were doing something really niche, and it just so happened that they were looking for that service at that time.
Yeah. I think, when you're starting a business, credibility is one of the key things you're trying to build. And there's something, it's like visceral when someone sees something that is a logo or a name or something that's impressive and already has some, cachet, and you would think, well, this other person wouldn't be hiring someone if they didn't know what they were doing. That's kind of how you start to build some credibility. With my company, we did an early, very small project, kind of like you're talking about. Wasn't like a huge, significant deal, but we did a very small project with a wing of the United Nations.
Okay.
And that was a big deal, right? You started walking, we kind of in United Nations, and people are like, gee whiz, like, Now, was I ever invited to the United Nations building? No, I was not. Tried, but it counted, and it was the truth. I mean, we had done some work with that, but you start to build credibility. When we were starting out, no matter how we sold to schools, and no matter how small the school was, if we did 10 tests, 5 students, on that campus, that logo, boop, went on the page of places that it was used, and it really created a lot of momentum. Totally. It kind of gave us as an unknown startup, out of nowheresville, gave us a lot of credibility. So it's interesting that it's so crazy though that it is a little bit of luck, I guess, but you still have to execute, because you went from literally starting up and pitching one and not getting anywhere to the Kobe Bryant team, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, there was like 3 years of misery in between that too.
Right. There always is.
I worked in credit repair for the first 3 years. And I don't know, the credit repair is I think the CEO of the company that I worked for, he now fled somewhere and is like,
oh God,
because it all went downhill.
Jeez.
So like, real shady. Not work I would put on my resume, but it paid the bills, and I was kind of in that world for the first couple of years, but was slowly able to find the projects that got me out of it. But you got to start somewhere. And so, there was 3 years where like I would never show anyone the work that I did. Not too proud of it, but I did learn a lot of the, how to run a business, how to, build a website. I get to pick up those skills in an environment that was pretty welcoming, because not a lot of people were willing to do that work at that time. So there is that part of the story. We don't like to always tell that part, but
I mean,
it did take a couple years,
has it
to get there.
Everybody has it. Now, when you're in that couple of years, is this product design thing, is it in your mind and you're thinking, man, I'm going for this. This is the thing. I got to do all this other stuff now. But that's the place I'm going. Or was it like, did you have like 5 things that you were running and you were like, well, one of these matches is going to start a fire and I'm going to run there?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, so I started out, I had some kind of design inclination, right? Not good, but I knew that I was better at that than the complex back-end code, right?
Right.
So that's where I really focused and tried to hone my work. And even when I was working on these credit repair websites, I was always trying to go the extra mile. And not just for them, but really for me, like, how far can I push this thing? So I always knew that was, if I was going to do anything, that was where I had at least some natural ability. So that's where I focused. I focused there. I focused on the front end. But you do everything. And so through that, I mean, if you pull on the thread a little bit more, you also learn how to sell. Because you start an agency and you kind of stop doing the work a lot of the times, and you start becoming the point of sale. So that was another skill that I picked up that then led into Crew, which was jumping ahead a little bit. But after the agency, I joined the team at Crew to be their head of partnerships. So it's really had nothing to do with product development or product design.
Interesting. It's that's, we talk about it all the time on the show. Like, it doesn't matter if you're the head entrepreneur, if you're the head of an organization, doesn't matter what you specialize in. You better also be good at sales, or get somebody who is, right, that can actually make these connections. There's an ocean of people that are like sitting in a dark room building amazing products, but can't actually get it into someone's hand and show them that it can solve the problem for them. How did you? Most people are self-taught. Were you also like a self-taught kind of sales guy?
Yeah, it was really just survival, right? Is like, I know I want to do this work. I know I want to charge for it, and I can, but we were 2 people at the time. And so you're both just on the front lines trying to pull in any business you can, and then you have to fulfill the contract. And what we eventually did, it's a lot easier to find people to do the work than it was to be the face of the company. And so we always had to be on the front lines trying to find the next client. And so that's where, you just kind of trial by fire, learning how to sell, learning what worked, learning how to demo, all of that. It took years, but it became kind of my core skill set actually in that time, rather than the design, the development work.
Gosh, this is like a rant that I'll try not to go on too long, but like selling in a non-sleazy, problem-solving way is the surest bet to take really anybody who's has credibility as a person and can talk to someone. It's the quickest way to give them a skill that can pay the bills and really do a lot of great things in their life. And I just don't understand why more universities don't, they have all these obscure things you can major in, but there's never really a true, enterprise sale track that you can take. And so you talk to all the best salespeople, and they all started. I mean, you were a music business major, right? And I've got all these people that majored in all these different things, and then later found selling and figured out that if you can just not be a sleazeball, right? And if you can actually listen to what the person wants and try to help them and just have credibility, it's amazing the kind of things that you can get into
Absolutely.
as a business person if people believe that you're actually trying to solve a problem. It's a rant that I get on sometimes. I wish there was
Everything
more
is
training
sales.
like that.
That's the like.
Yeah.
Sales is a job interview. You're selling yourself, and
It's
most
dating.
people don't approach it. Dating is
Sales is then dating.
But what
Yeah,
is
exactly.
the benefit to the other person? Like we always take this like, and so many people make this mistake in job interviews just to go there real quick, but they make it about themselves. But sales is about the person on the other side of the table. So many people tell us what they want out of the job, but what do they bring to the table? What are they going to do for us? That's the sale component that so many people miss. But yeah, sales is dating. Sales is product pitches internally. It's, I think, one of the reasons I've been successful as a product leader is because you can pitch your ideas, which is selling, to the people on the other side of the table. And it's a skill that so many people, I think, lack. It would be amazing if colleges actually taught the psychology behind how to communicate your ideas and how to get people on the other side of the table to agree with you.
Yeah, everybody has a bad experience with a sales guy at some point, and that's what made I don't want to be in sales. Like I don't want to be like that guy. And that's not necessarily what high end sales and partnership can be.
Right.
Now we're burying the lead here because we've sort of talked about Michael the person. You're now the chief product officer, right? Chief product officer for Dribbble. So tell me about Dribbble. I'm sure most people are familiar with it, but talk about Dribbble and what you guys bring to the market.
Yeah, so Dribbble is one of the largest portfolio networks for designers. And so it really is where designers post their work in order to get discovered, find community, find inspiration. And it's almost a work tool for designers around the world to find trends, ideas to solve the problems that they're working on. But also it's an incredible destination for anyone that is looking to hire a designer, for a project as small as a logo design, all the way up to, a full-fledged app design, and even development. And so Dribbble is really over the last 13 years kind of carved out this space in the market where it's one of the few places and few social networks that designers can go to find community, but also find an opportunity, which is really what drives me, because I know how hard it is in the early days. Being a freelancer, starting a small agency, and always having to have that next project lined up. It's a never-ending source of anxiety. So
sure.
So it's something I relate to, and I love seeing people find success on there. And it was actually one of the early places that we found work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For when you were in the early days.
Yeah, we started posting on Dribbble, and that's where clients would find us, because they were searching on Dribbble for who can do this cool thing, or who's doing design in this way. And we would get discovered on Dribbble. It was a great lead source for us.
And now, what a cool career trajectory, right? Now you're running the whole product. That's amazing.
It's very cool.
Your Dribbble page must have been pretty solid, right? If they were willing to hire you. So
I mean, I look at it today, I'm like, oh, what were they thinking? But in the day, it was pretty good.
Yeah, thought it was pretty good. So, a lot of our audience are outside of people who like to watch someone do a half-assed job at grilling. Also, a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Startup people. And, when one of the things that we talk about a lot, and I see entrepreneurs struggle with, is they try to find the thing that the problem that they're going to go solve, or the thing that they're going to build. And oftentimes I see people make the mistake of trying to build something and then go find a problem for it. And I think that obviously that's backwards, right? But if you're doing it the correct way, you found a problem and somebody says, man, if I could just have somebody build me something to solve this, I would pay for that all day. And so would a lot of people. How do you go from that conversation, which a lot of people can sort of, work and end up finally having that conversation like, ooh, there's something. How do you take that conversation and then go off and figure out how to build a great product?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of hard learning. We were, as an agency, we looked at the agencies like Basecamp, Basecamp grew out of an earlier agency and MetaLab, and they were just building these incredible products. And so we actually were those people that started building based on technology and then trying to find a customer for it. So we learned the hard way. We actually built Brandisty, which is a brand asset management system, but we only built it because we liked the technology behind it, not because we liked the solution. We never really were able to find a product market fit for it. And so we wasted 150, 200,000 trying to bring this thing to market. And it never really got traction. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but we didn't raise any money. We wanted to be bootstrapped.
Oh, I think it does sound like a lot to a lot of people. That sounds like a lot.
I mean, startups burn $1 million a month these days. But to us, it was a ton of money. It was a huge risk. We thought we knew what we were doing. And we didn't. That's actually, why we started the podcast, because I realized quickly we were in trouble. And we need to get advice from people, and no one would pick up the phone. So,
interesting. So you started the podcast to get advice, right?
Because we had Heaton Shaw, we had Mikkel Cho from Unsplash on early on. But they weren't going to take my call. They weren't going to give me 30 minutes just to, so, but if I could promote them in some way, they would get on. And so we were just asking them questions about things that we were struggling with because we didn't understand. At the time, we had the tech. Why don't people want it? I don't get it, And it was a hard lesson to learn. But truly, we were building because we were excited about the underlying technology, not because of the solution. So it takes slowing down, right? And there's so many problems that people have. But it takes slowing down and finding those trends. At Dribbble, we just built an education business about 2 years ago. We just was coming out of the pandemic. We saw a need for it because we were doing surveys on the site to learn more about who was visiting the site, and we saw that there was a ton of really early designers in their career, but we didn't have a product for them. We didn't really have anything other than the inspiration on the site for them to actually become a customer of Dribbble. We weren't serving them all that well. And so we were surveying them. We were kind of learning more about their needs, their interests. And then we just started experimenting with workshops, which were really light way to do just a 1-day, 3-hour session with a designer. And we got Aaron Draplin, who's a very famous brand designer, to do our first one. And then we got Dan Cederholm, the founder of Dribbble, to do our second on typography. And then we had Dan Mall do one on product design, and it made double the other two. And so then we tried again, and we found someone else to do kind of something in the product design space. And again, it just sold out way beyond our expectations. So we realized there's something here, but it was through that kind of light experimentation, doing something that was really easy. It didn't take any software. It was just on Zoom. So it was just Zoom conversations. It was just Zoom. Yeah, it was all because it was during the pandemic, so it was all just virtual. And we used Eventbrite to do all the ticketing. So we didn't actually build anything. We marketed it on our social. I mean, Dribble's got a reach, so we had a bit of an unfair advantage, but we didn't commit to building anything until we actually knew what the market wanted. And even within education, did the market want branding? Did they want typography? Did they want, coloring? They wanted product design. And we learned that over the course of the year, because with product design, they could then get a job. Because there was a hot market for product designers. So we took that and then we developed a 16-week product design course. And we went from charging $299 for the 1-day workshops to $3,000 for this 16-week course.
Whoa, okay. And people are buying it.
We wanted 100 students the first time. We were like, all right, let's just if we can get 100 people in it, we've got something. And 100 was kind of, it wasn't quite break even. We would have done okay, but it wasn't huge. We had 350 students sign up for the first cohort of this. We're now on our third cohort, and it's been growing ever since. So we knew that we kind of tapped into something, but we learned that over the course of honestly a year and a half. before we really committed to building something big and putting this course together. Like, there's 16 hours of video that go along with it. We have a whole mentor network that we match every student with, so they have their own mentor that ushers them through the course. And all of these things we learned by talking to customers over that year and a half. If we had just been hasty and kind of copied maybe what was in the market, or just made some assumptions about what we think people want, we would have gotten it wrong, because we ran a lot of webinars where like 16 people signed up, and we're like, all right, well, social media templates is not where it's at. So it was being patient and really learning from the market. We didn't give the students what they necessarily explicitly asked for, but once we understood their problem, we were able to build a curriculum that did solve what they needed, which was both kind of a zero to employment opportunity where they were building their portfolio, and then connecting them to the hiring market, which we have on Dribbble, and then connecting them to hiring managers. And with that combination, then we had something that could really scale. And so to answer your question, it's a bit long-winded, but it takes time, and you got to be patient. Just because one person has the problem, you got to validate that enough people have it and that you really understand the problem that you're solving. Because oftentimes we kind of run at, oh, I worked at this place, they struggled with this, I'm sure everyone else is. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not, right. and so, but it takes that research work early on to really understand what you're trying to build for.
It's like the discipline to listen, right?
Exactly.
To be, you feel like you got it figured out, but I need to go ask 10 more people. I need to go talk to 15 more organizations, right? To figure out if, and maybe you find little nuances on the problem that you hadn't thought about before. I certainly made the mistake early in our career where we assumed that an organization that we were working with, they have this problem. Everybody's going to have this problem. Listen, we start building a thing, and then we take it to other people, and they go, yeah, we don't really have that problem, and you think, oh, great, right. And then that would change how you approach, you're willing to build something for free for an early customer if you think that you can sell it to all sorts of people. If it's only for them, that sort of changes the economics of it, right? And you sort of got to factor that part in. Yep. Those are hard lessons that you learn. I'm going to check the sausage really quick.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we're not burning it. I wish you could. Oh man.
I
wish you could smell this, by the way. Holy cow. Talk about great products. I'm going to flip it over because I did my pet peeve, which is only season one side. So it's a little late in the grilling process to season the other side, but just don't tell anybody. One thing was really interesting what you were just talking about is, I spent a lot of my career working in and around higher education. And I think these alternative paths for people to get skills are so interesting to me. And I really think that you just see a lot of those things popping up. And I think in 20 years, you're going to see a cultural shift in the way people think about college and the way people think about what the step that I take after I get out of high school and I'm ready to start a career. Actually finding places where I learn a skill can oftentimes be so much more valuable than sort of meandering through college with no real plan and racking up a bunch of student loan debt. So I think it's really interesting that Dribbble found out that there's a niche for that, and that people on their platform had another need that was way outside of their core product, but that they had the credibility to solve.
Yeah, well, I think to your point, colleges, I feel like the promise of college used to be you graduate and you get a better job than you would without it. But the colleges in the market drifted apart, where colleges were teaching, like even in computer science, they're still teaching languages that aren't relevant to the market today. You're not learning JavaScript, you're learning Java. And same with design. Like you're learning kind of 1970s, 1980s philosophy in a lot of these courses, but you're not learning the fast-paced product design that a company like Google, Shopify, Spotify, that they're looking for in someone to come work for them. And I think that drift from the market with the increase in price, I know I graduated with this music business degree that was sold to me as if I was going to go work in the music industry. But when I got out to LA, no one gave They didn't care, right? Like I was walking into these offices and they're like, oh, so you have a music business degree. What's that?
How cool.
Yeah, like, cool, man. So you want to make me coffee? Like, it got me absolutely nowhere.
Right.
And that's the drift from the college away from what the market actually needs. And I think that's the space that these kind of boot camps they're trying to fill is how do I actually get someone to be employable faster or upskilled into the next stage of their career faster than taking 4 years where you have to learn earth science and philosophy and whatever else for the first 2 that really aren't transferable skills. Because like to your point, we're not learning sales, we're not learning how to do taxes, we're not learning things that you actually need. So then you need to get that education elsewhere. I spoke at a design school couple years ago, and all the students there was 20 that came up to me after, and they were just like, what do I do now? I graduated, but I can't get any interviews, Yeah. And it was because the school wasn't connected to the end result the students wanted. Like, they don't want to learn design, they want to go work, they want to go earn a living, they want to pay their rent. They want to do something exciting. And so the difference with these boot camps is a lot of them are focusing on that graduate experience, that how do I get people into a career? And that was one of the secret sauces of Dribbble, is that we have over 60,000 of the top companies have hired with us. We have one of the largest job boards for designers and search products. And so we are able to get them directly in front of those hiring managers at all of the Fortune 500 companies to at least get them that first opportunity. And that's something that the schools aren't able to do, and yet the schools are commanding $20,000-$30,000. I worked at a design institute that was $90,000 as a teacher, right? And so if you can't get someone an opportunity after that, I think they're failing, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing in the market.
I don't know that you're ever going to take the traditional sort of curriculum model of a higher education institute and be able to apply it to an industry like technology and technology products and be able to keep up, because those things move so quickly. I mean, if you think of a programming language or a technique, a product design, how long is that considered mainstream? 5-6 years before there's something nipping at its heels? So think about that for a second. Let's just say it's 5 years. It would take a school maybe 18 months, if they're really on it, 18 months to recognize the trend, then probably a minimum of 2 years to really develop a curriculum, get it sort of blessed by all the hierarchy, set it up, enroll some students in it. Now you're 3.5 years in, you train maybe 1 or 2 waves of students through on this new product, and then that product technology or that technique is already kind of fallen out of favor. Yeah. So you almost have to rethink the way you're going to identify trends and teach them to people. You can't teach it in such a linear fashion like you can teach, say, algebra or biology, because those things are not changing nearly as rapidly as technology and product design is. And I don't know if anybody's having that conversation, but I think the prevalence of, say, a Dribbble boot camp, all these there's YouTube, people teach themselves all sorts of things just watching YouTube. I think the prevalence of that is going to continue to force those conversations at universities where they can't teach everything the same way that they teach, they've always taught it.
The rigor has got to go. I mean, we went to Jesse Showalter, who has a YouTube channel, is an incredible facilitator. He's working at Apple. And so he's like in the field at one of these companies. He knows what their expectations are, what they're looking for. And we had him build the curriculum as a side project.
Wow.
It took him, a couple weekends to put together all the material, probably a little bit more. But that's the material that we were able to bring to the market within 3 months versus, to your point, 2 years to get it, it approved and accredited and signed off by a bureaucratic body. You have to move faster than that. And, and you have to tap into people not who have retired from industry, but are still in industry.
I think there's elements of the process that don't move as fast, though. Like, teaching someone problem solving techniques, teaching someone project management, teaching someone, how to how to like build a correct, just a product management process and all of that, Scrum techniques and all these different techniques, that those aren't moving nearly as fast as program languages. It's almost like you need to teach like the building blocks of being a good, having a good career in the technology field. You can teach those sort of linearly and slowly, but as far as like the tool that you're going to reach into your tool bag and use to build something, you're going to teach that a whole different way.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So, the last thing I kind of want to ask you, this has actually been a great conversation, by the way. So thank you for humoring us on our grilling podcast here to talk product. If you built companies, you've gone from, having great products to building a great company. And that's really what that Dribbble story is, which you were just talking about. Used to be Dribbble was a great product now, but a company that can pivot and see that people need skills and build them something for that is evidence that they've become a great company, And so how do you, if you're talking to someone who is starting out, they're at that early stage like you were when you were still working a day job and having this thing on the side, what advice can you give to that person so that they know that the product that they are building or the thing that they're trying to create is the most likely thing to solve the problem that they're going for? What is the advice that you can give somebody in that stage?
I think one of the things that I see people really struggle with is just letting their ego go. I have shipped so much stuff that nobody wants. And I've loved it. It looked beautiful. I was so excited, but no one actually wanted it. And I see a lot of people make the mistake where they just double down because they hear the Steve Jobs story.
Yes.
Or like the first they laugh at you, then they hate you, and then you change the world or something, right? Like, they hear these like mantras, but I don't believe in reality those things actually happen. There is a thing with conviction, but I see so many people get lost in that conviction, where they waste years following a path of, to your point, maybe it's just a small TAM. Like the total addressable market is just not there.
Right.
Maybe their solution is a feature, not a product, right? Where it's just kind of a bolt on. But if you're going to get someone to switch, your solution as a whole needs to be 10 times better than what they're using, because the cost of switching, the cognitive load of learning something new is too much for people, and people hate change. We used to change a button color on Dribbble, and Twitter would go nuts because people just didn't like change.
Right.
They just didn't want it to be different. And so, I think it's staying malleable. Like, you have to stay convicted that you're solving a problem and that you're the best person to solve it. But what that solution is, you need to be able to take those outside inputs to evolve quickly. And things are moving faster than ever. Like, you look at, the crypto market fell apart, but you look at like Web3 and the speed at which they're able to move, where like these financial companies are being built in a weekend, and then they're taking in, they're holding billions of dollars in asset value with a weekend project. That scale and speed is the world that we live in. And so, but to be able to do that and to do it effectively and to do it long term, we have to be malleable and kind of let go of our ego and be like, I can be wrong. And sometimes it takes just getting beat over the head a couple times. But when you get beat over the head, you have to listen, right? You have to actually, all right, let me consider another avenue. Maybe this customer is right. Maybe their needs are different than the solution that I have. Let me see how I can modify. And if we can do that, you're able to get more cycles under you so that you can get to that big solution a lot faster. And even that, like with education, it took us a while, but if we had just said, we know that education is this, we may still be there with a very small business today, trying to plug along, pitching products that people don't really want, or education solutions that they don't want.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I think the Steve Jobs story, like you mentioned, has while it inspires people to get into entrepreneurship, I think it sends people in the wrong direction so often. And if you actually read Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, there was a portion of that biography where he talked about the fallacy of the people around Steve Jobs was that they would also think they were Steve Jobs and that they were always right, and they would try to act like him, and they would just fail miserably, right, in a big smoking heap because they weren't listening to the clues around them that they were headed in the wrong direction. And even Steve Jobs wasn't always Steve Jobs. Like go look at the next computer chapter of his career. The only reason that thing even got off the ground was because of his name. It was like way ahead of its time, and it didn't have a product market fit, and it just all of that stuff clouds people. When you only look at his career and you see the iPod and the iPad and the iPhone and iTunes and the Mac, you miss all this other crap, the Lisa, right? All these other things that he built in his career that just didn't work, and his ego made him keep driving in the wrong direction. You're much better. You have a much higher chance of success if you kind of iterate on things, I think, and you say, you build something that's best you can do. We call it, make progress over perfection, right?
Absolutely.
And so, go out, put something out, get some feedback, iterate on it, put it out, get some feedback, and just keep climbing like that. And you're so much further along than people who just sort of sit back and try to hit a home run in their first swing. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yes.
And so, for those starting out, sometimes it takes years to learn that. The faster you can learn it, I think the more successful you'll be.
Yeah, it's about, are you trying to, I used to have this saying when I was trying to get people to understand how to think about a problem, like, you've got to prioritize winning over being right. I put a team of people around me that were way smarter than me, and as long as we won, because I won too, I was on the winning team, I didn't care if I was the one that came up with the right answer. I get to look smart by proxy because all these other smart people are coming up with solutions. But if you get the Steve Jobs complex and you got to be the guy in the turtleneck holding up the world changer, man, you're gonna miss a lot of data around you. Yeah. Well, we could do this all day. Let's take one last. Have you ever had Conecuh sausage, by the way, Michael?
No, I have not. Now I'm gonna have to go try to find it.
Now we're talking. So we're getting done. I think we need to get these bad boys off. Michael, where can people find you online if they want to get more of this brilliance on product design?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Michael Sacca. We do a weekly podcast, which is probably the best way, on rocketship.fm. We're telling product stories every week there. My host, Mike Belcito, who runs Industry, the product conference, joins me each week. So, that's probably the best way.
Do you ever grill on the podcast? That's what I want to know. Do you ever?
We do not.
Well, that's one thing I can help with if you ever get into that. Michael, it was so nice having you on the show. You're such a brilliant talent. I thank you so much for sharing your story with our listeners, and we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been great. Take care now.
Yeah, you too.